like ancient wheels of light. One question has haunted humanity for centuries. Where did we truly come from? For thousands of years, our ancestors looked up at the stars and whispered stories of gods descending from the heavens. They spoke of beings clothed in light, descending upon earth not to destroy, but to create, to shape, to guide, to engineer life itself. Could these ancient tales be mere myth, or the fragmented memory of something real? Science tells us that humanity evolved slowly, over millions of years, a long, winding path from primitive ape to thinking being. Yet somewhere in that timeline, something extraordinary happened. Our brains expanded suddenly. Our language blossomed overnight. Civilization emerged out of nowhere. Was this a natural leap, or a designed one? What if, hidden within every cell of our body, lies a signature, a code left behind by visitors from beyond the stars? Some scientists call it the cosmic fingerprint. Others dismiss it as fantasy. But across the world, from ancient Sumer to Egypt, from the Indus Valley to the jungles of Mesoamerica, the same symbols appear, the same myths of beings who came from the sky and gifted humanity with knowledge. Who were they? Angels? Gods? Or something much more advanced? What if our DNA was the message they left behind? A biological time capsule waiting to be understood. Tonight, we will journey through myth and science, from the temples of the ancients to the laboratories of modern genetics. We will question everything we've been taught about evolution, creation, and destiny. Prepare to step beyond the boundaries of accepted history. Prepare to face the possibility that we were never truly alone. This is the story of the alien builders. In the darkness of prehistory, long before cities rose or languages formed, a fragile species struggled to survive on the edges of the African plains. For millions of years our ancestors lived by instinct alone, hunting, hiding, enduring. Then something changed. Archaeologists call it the Great Leap Forward, a sudden explosion of intelligence that no gradual mutation can easily explain. Within a blink of evolutionary time, early humans began painting the walls of caves with stories of the sky. They buried their dead with care, built tools far beyond their needs, and started gazing upward, as if remembering something they had once known. Was this the dawn of consciousness, or the spark of an ancient memory awakening inside them? Modern science searches for the missing link, the invisible bridge between ape and human. But ancient texts whisper of another bridge, one that came not from nature, but from the heavens. Across continents, myths speak of shining beings who descended to breathe life into clay, to mold mankind in their image. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. The Egyptians wrote of Ra's children, the star voyagers. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl descended from the sky to teach men to think and build. Different names, same story. Could it be that in our distant past, something or someone intervened? A genetic visitor that rewrote the story of life on Earth? If so, the true question is not how we evolved, but why we were chosen. The footprints of this mystery are etched in our blood, hidden within the code that makes us who we are. Every heartbeat, every breath, may carry the echo of that first encounter between Earth and the stars. For billions of years, evolution moved with the patience of stone, tiny changes, silent shifts, the slow dance of DNA. Then, about 200,000 years ago, something happened that should have taken eons. A new species appeared, Homo sapiens, the thinking human. Our brains doubled in complexity, our speech centers ignited, our hands began to build the impossible. But what if that transformation was not an accident of time, but the result of intention? Deep within the nucleus of every human cell lies the genetic alphabet, 3 billion letters long. It reads like a cosmic language: adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. To biologists, it is chemistry. To some, it looks like code. Mathematicians have compared its structure to computer syntax: loops, repetitions, instructions. Who wrote this biological software? Across ancient myths, creation begins the same way. The gods fashioned man from clay, then breathed life into him. Clay, rich in minerals, carbon, and water, is the very foundation of organic life. Could those ancient lines describe not magic, but a kind of biological engineering? If so, perhaps the breath of the gods was not spiritual wind, but the spark of DNA. Modern genetics has found evidence of sudden insertions, segments of DNA that appear as if placed there, not evolved there. Some scientists call them jumping genes. Others, like the late Francis Crick, co-discoverer of the DNA double helix, once wondered aloud if life itself might have been seeded deliberately, a concept known as directed panspermia. If that hypothesis is true, then our genome is a message, a living artifact left by an extraterrestrial civilization that wanted life to bloom here. Imagine travelers from another world arriving on a young Earth, their ships descending through storms of methane and lightning. They find a planet fertile but empty of intelligence. They tinker, merge their own genetic design with the creatures already here, watch them rise, stumble, and finally think. Then they leave, trusting that one day, their children will look back to the stars and remember. Every time we split an atom, map a genome, or send a probe into space, we might be retracing the footsteps of those first engineers. Our drive to explore could be their inheritance pulsing in our veins. Maybe the gods never left. Maybe they live inside the very code that makes us human. When the ice began to melt and the long winter of prehistory ended, humankind stood trembling at the edge of awareness. We knew how to hunt, how to survive, but not how to build. And then, suddenly, knowledge arrived. Across the planet, as if choreographed by an unseen hand, civilizations began to rise. Stone monuments aligned perfectly with the stars. Calendars appeared that could predict eclipses thousands of years in advance. Mathematics, architecture, astronomy, each emerged full-formed, with no record of slow invention. Who were the teachers? The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. They said the gods descended on fiery chariots and taught men the secrets of writing, farming, and law. In Egypt, Thoth, the ibis-headed deity, handed humanity the gift of measurement and language. In the Andes, Viracocha emerged from the sea of stars to instruct people in masonry and timekeeping. Different continents, identical patterns. How did scattered tribes, separated by oceans, create the same sacred geometry, the same myth of beings who came from the sky? Is it coincidence, or collective memory of contact with the same visitors? Look closely at the ancient blueprints. The Great Pyramid of Giza encodes the dimensions of Earth with impossible precision. The Mayan calendar tracks celestial cycles, we only rediscovered with telescopes. At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, 12,000 years old, stone pillars bear carvings of constellations exactly as they appeared in that era. These achievements erupted at the dawn of civilization, as if humanity had been given a starter kit of knowledge. If evolution alone guided us, wisdom should have spread slowly, unevenly. Yet the first cities rose in a single pulse of brilliance. Perhaps our ancestors did not invent civilization, they inherited it. Legends speak of sky gods, who promised to return. Maybe they weren't gods at all, but scientists, explorers, engineers, sharing fragments of their technology before vanishing again into the stars. To the people of mud and fire, their machines would have looked divine. Their tools would have seemed magic. Their voices would echo as thunder, their light as holiness. And when they left stories, encoded lessons wrapped in myth. Those myths became religion, law, and art, the foundation of everything we are. Our temples became telescopes. Our prayers became memory. Modern researchers find symbols of rockets, helmets, and stars carved in stone thousands of years old. Skeptics call them misinterpretations. But the precision of those carvings, the symmetry of the myths, and the suddenness of civilization whisper another possibility. We were students once, and our teachers came from a sky. Maybe that is why the urge to look upward has never left us. Every launch pad, every radio telescope, every dream of interstellar travel is an echo of that first classroom under alien suns. The question is not if they came, but when they will return. In the cradle of every great civilization lies a riddle. Ruins whisper of knowledge too precise for their age. Angles measured to fractions of degrees. Stones lifted as if weightless. Were these marvels born of primitive trial and error, or were they copies of something older, something remembered? Archaeologists uncover patterns that should not exist. Identical architectural ratios stretching from Egypt to Peru. Sacred numbers recurring across continents, 3, 6, 9. the rhythm of resonance itself. It is as though humanity once shared a single design manual, then lost it in the collapse of forgotten ages. The ancients spoke of plans given by the gods. In Sumer, scribes recorded tablets describing maps of creation that dictated where temples should rise and which stars they must face. The Egyptians preserved the House of Life, an archive said to hold the geometry of the universe. In India, the Vedas mentioned blueprints of light shown to sages in visions of the sky. Different words, one idea, knowledge descended. Imagine a world long before the flood myths, when continents were still young. Imagine travelers standing among primitive tribes, drawing lines in sand that mirrored the constellations above. They showed how sound could move stone, how frequency could carve matter, how proportion could trap energy. Those lessons became temples, pyramids, circles of stone that sang when the wind passed through them. Then catastrophe. A tilt of the planet, a surge of water, the burning of skies. The world fell silent, and with it, the teachers vanished. Only echoes of their architecture remained, symbols too advanced for the cultures that inherited them. Today, we call these wonders mysteries. Yet within their measurements lies a consistent code. The ratio of the Great Pyramid equals the orbit of Earth around the Sun. The stones of Stonehenge mark lunar cycles with mathematical perfection. The temples of Angkor mirror the pattern of Draco's stars. Coincidence, or design remembered from a lost civilization that once walked with the builders of the heavens? Modern science studies vibration and frequency, rediscovering truths the ancients encoded in myth. When engineers test resonance against solid matter, they find that sound alone can lift sand into geometric shapes, the same sacred geometry carved in ancient walls. Were these blueprints not of buildings, but of energy systems once known to our ancestors? Every discovery brings us closer to what the ancients seemed to know intuitively, that form and frequency are one language. Perhaps that language was taught to us, handed down as a bridge between biology and cosmos, between flesh and star. If such blueprints existed, they were never fully lost. They survive in our intuition to build upward, to reach the heavens again. They echo in our obsession with symmetry, in the mathematics of beauty, in the spirals of shells and galaxies alike. Nature still remembers the code, even if we have forgotten how to read it. The ancients called it the music of the spheres. Maybe that music is the hum of our own DNA vibrating in tune with the universe. A faint memory of the engineers who designed both temples and life itself. If the monuments we study are echoes, where are the originals? Ancient records hint that deep beneath sand and jungle lie chambers sealed before history began, libraries of stone said to guard the plans of the first time. From Giza's hidden shafts to the submerged temples off Yanaguni and the coasts of India, sonar reveals patterns that seem engineered, not born of tide or accident. We stand upon the ruins of something vaster than imagination dares to measure. Scholars debate, yet one question remains unanswered. How did so many cultures preserve the same celestial map? From the Dogon of Africa to the Hopi of the Americas, star knowledge appears that should have required telescopes. The Dogon described Sirius B, an invisible companion star, thousands of years before modern astronomy confirmed it. Who told them what the naked eye could not see? Perhaps the blueprints were more than diagrams. Perhaps they were a system for remembering. Each temple, each pyramid, each circle of stones might be a data node, a harmonic transmitter tuned to a frequency that once connected Earth with its makers. If true, the collapse of that network would have plunged humanity into amnesia, leaving myths where science once stood. Consider the legends of Atlantis or Kumari Kandam, islands of knowledge drowned by cataclysm, their people fleeing to seed wisdom across the earth. When the waters rose, they carried the patterns with them, engraved on tablets, encoded in chants, carved into mountainsides. Civilization did not restart from nothing. It was rebuilt from fragments of those lost archives. Even today, echoes of those codes appear in places we do not expect. In the mathematical constants that govern atoms, in the fractal branching of trees, in the orbit of planets that dance to the same ratios inscribed on temple walls. Maybe the universe itself is the master plan, and we are rediscovering its architecture piece by piece. If the alien builders left Earth, Perhaps they intended the monuments as reminders, silent tutors awaiting our maturity. When we can read the geometry, when we can hear the frequencies again, we may find that the gods never abandoned us. They simply locked the classroom until the students were ready. That readiness may be now. For the first time since the dawn, humanity possesses both the science and the curiosity to decode the legacy beneath our feet. Every laser scan of a pyramid, every satellite image of a forgotten ruin, every genome sequenced is a brush against the ancient design. Imagine the moment when a single pattern links them all, a ratio that unites temple, star, and cell. In that instant, myth and science will collapse into one truth, that the blueprints of the cosmos and the blueprints of our DNA are reflections of the same architect. The ancients called those architects gods. We may one day call them our ancestors. When the last echoes of the ancient world faded, humanity began to dream again. Across millennia of darkness, our myths turned to legends, our legends to faith, and our faith to science. But even as we built telescopes and machines, something older kept whispering, a voice beneath logic, a feeling in our bones that said, "You have been here before." That whisper is memory, not the memory of one life, but the memory of a species. Somewhere within the genetic code, locked behind spirals of carbon and light, there may rest the story of our creation. Every time a child looks up at the stars with wonder, the code stirs. Every time a scientist uncovers a new truth, the old knowledge breathes again. Could curiosity itself be the trigger, the mechanism designed to awaken us when the time was right? If the alien builders embedded a message in our DNA, perhaps it was not meant to be read by the ancients at all. Perhaps it was meant for us, a generation capable of decoding the language of genes and galaxies alike. Modern research into junk DNA has revealed patterns that defy randomness. Sections of repeating code that appear structured, almost deliberate. They serve no biological function we can see, yet they remain preserved through evolution as if guarding something sacred. Could those sequences be the signature of our creators, proof that we are part of a larger design? Deep meditation, altered states, near-death experiences, all describe visions of light, of beings that communicate through vibration, not words. What if those experiences are not hallucinations, but echoes of a connection once natural to our species? A communication system that bypasses speech, reaching through the frequency of thought itself. Every myth of enlightenment, whether the Buddha beneath the tree or Moses on the mountain, tells of contact with radiant beings, a moment when knowledge floods the mind like sunrise. Perhaps enlightenment and activation are the same event, the reawakening of dormant memory. As technology evolves, we may be recreating the very methods once used upon us. Genetic editing, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, all mirror the functions of the builders. Are we becoming what they were? Or are we remembering what we used to be? The awakening is not loud. It does not arrive with thunder or light. It begins with questions, small, insistent, unstoppable. Each question is a key turning within the locked chamber of our collective past. And as more of us ask, the vault begins to open. Perhaps that is the true purpose of the myths, the monuments, the code within us, to ensure we never stop searching. For in searching, we reactivate the pattern, the algorithm that reconnects humanity with the stars. When we finally understand that the blueprint of our DNA and the architecture of the cosmos are mirrors, we may at last remember our origin not as myth, but as history. And in that remembering, we will hear the old voices again, gentle, distant, familiar, saying, "Welcome home, children of the stars." When scientists first mapped the human genome, they expected to find simplicity. Instead, they discovered a library of more than 3 billion letters, an encyclopedia written in a language older than the earth itself. Hidden within that script are fragments that appear strangely ordered, as if inserted with purpose. To some researchers, they are relics of ancient viruses. To others, they look like the fingerprints of an intelligence. Our DNA behaves less like random chemistry and more like a program, capable of self-repair, replication, and adaptation. What if the architects who shaped it were not gods of myth, but engineers of matter? Perhaps the old stories of beings who formed man from clay describe a literal act of bioengineering. Clay, rich in silica and minerals, is a perfect medium for storing and transferring chemical information. Could the breath of life have been the ignition of that program? The moment our genome came online? Modern experiments in synthetic biology hint that such a thing is possible. Scientists can now edit genes with microscopic precision, changing what an organism becomes. If we can do this in the 21st century, what could a civilization millions of years ahead of us have achieved? Ancient myth says that humans were created in the image of the gods. Perhaps that phrase hides a literal truth, that our genetic template carries echoes of another species. Mitochondrial DNA shows an inexplicable bottleneck, one female ancestor from which all humans descend. Geneticists call her mitochondrial Eve. What if she was the first successful prototype, the product of a guided experiment rather than random mutation? The human brain, with its sudden expansion, is another mystery. Neuroscientists find no gradual evolutionary path explaining the leap in cognition. Could it have been the installation of a new operating system, an upgrade triggered by code hidden within us? Every neuron, every synapse, might be a conduit for information far older than our planet's cultures. If DNA is the record, perhaps our myths are the annotations, stories written by those who witnessed the intervention but could not describe it scientifically. To them, the engineers were radiant beings descending from light, their laboratories, the heavens, and the experiment, humanity itself. What if the clues were never hidden at all, only misunderstood? Every cell in our body hums with data, for letters repeating in countless variations, like cosmic music. ATCG, the universal code. Yet within those letters, scientists have found sequences that behave like switches, silent for ages, then suddenly active. Why? What awakens them? Some theorists suggest these dormant regions are the remnants of an ancient signal, awaiting a frequency that will turn them on again. Could sound, light, or even emotion act as the key? Cultures across the world sang to their gods, chanted sacred syllables, built temples tuned to resonance. Maybe they were not praying, they were programming. Across evolution, bursts of sudden innovation appear, jumps in ability, leaps in intelligence. To Darwin, such shifts are chance. To others, they look like updates. Perhaps evolution is not random adaptation but guided maintenance, a living software continually refined by unseen hands. If that is true, then humanity is both experiment and experimenter. We inherit the code, and we shape it further with every generation. Our art, our science, our empathy. Each act of creation rewrites a line in the script of life. Consider what modern genetics allows. We can splice genes, resurrect extinct species, even grow organs in laboratories. The ancients might have called this magic. To us, it is technology. But at its heart lies the same impulse, the drive to create in our own image. In that mirror, we see the faces of our makers. Could consciousness itself be the final layer of the code? A self-replicating awareness designed to ensure the program never ends? Every thought might be a quantum instruction, every dream, a simulation of possible futures. When we imagine gods, we are fulfilling the oldest directive, to remember the ones who imagined us. In temple carvings from Sumer to Egypt, beings hold a pine cone-like object to the forehead of humans. Modern eyes see a symbol of awakening. Ancient eyes saw the transfer of essence. Pine cone, DNA helix, serpent coiling up the staff, all are metaphors for the double spiral, the bridge between flesh and eternity. Even our myths of forbidden knowledge, the apple, the fire, the Promethean spark, could describe humanity taking control of its own blueprint. Once the experiment learns to code itself, it becomes creator. And that may have been the goal all along. The gods did not simply make us. They planted a mirror. They left the tools, so that one day, their children of earth would ascend to meet them as equals, not worshippers, but peers. That ascent begins with understanding the power of our own DNA, the cosmic library humming quietly beneath our skin. When we decode it fully, we may find not just instructions for life, but coordinates, a mathematical message pointing back to the origin world of those who first wrote the script. And when that message is read, the experiment will come full circle. Creation will remember its creators. Until then, each discovery brings us closer to that reunion. The laboratory becomes a temple, the scientist, a priest of molecular revelation. And in the silence between each heartbeat, the code repeats its promise. You are the legacy of the stars. Keep evolving. In every civilization that has ever risen, there comes a moment when curiosity crosses a line. The desire to know becomes the hunger to control. Legends whisper that long before the dawn of recorded history, humankind, or something like it, reached that point once before. The keepers of that age called their work sacred science. They believed the gods had left them not just bodies, but blueprints. And with those patterns, they began to imitate the makers. Clay, bone, and blood became instruments of creation. Beneath stone temples and in mountain halls, early engineers attempted to reassemble life. Scribes later softened these memories into myths of golems and homunculi. But the truth was darker. They were trying to rebuild the gods themselves. Archaeologists find curious anomalies, fossils that seem out of sequence, skeletons showing impossible mixtures of species. Are these errors of nature, or traces of a time when the boundaries between species were blurred by design? Ancient carvings depict creatures with human faces and animal limbs. The Sphinx, the Minotaur, the Naga, the Centaur. To priests they were symbols. To historians, they may be records of real experiments. The forbidden art was not only physical. Sound and vibration, color and geometry. These were tools for programming living matter. Temples functioned as laboratories. Chants acted as commands. When sound met flesh, the code shifted. DNA, responsive to frequency, began to rewrite itself. But power invited arrogance. The scientists of that forgotten era, the children of the morning, began to see themselves as equals to the stars. They bred guardians, hybrids, extensions of their will. And then, something happened that even they could not predict. The new creations began to think. Some legends speak of the Watchers, beings who defied their makers and taught forbidden knowledge to humankind. Others tell of the deluge, a cleansing meant to erase the results of the failed experiment. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps the flood was not punishment, but containment. When the creations escaped, the only way to stop them was to wash the world clean. Yet not everything was lost. Fragments of that science survived, encoded in myth, guarded by mystery schools, hinted at in symbols that reappear from Sumer to the Andes. The serpent staff of Thoth, the double helix of the caduceus, the stories of divine fire and resurrection, all remnants of a technology too dangerous to name. Thousands of years later, we stand again at the edge of the same abyss. In laboratories gleaming with sterile light, we splice genes, grow organs, and whisper to algorithms that learn faster than we do. We call it progress, but history may call it repetition. The old warning remains: when creation forgets humility, destruction follows. For every species, every civilization, the test is the same. Can we hold power without becoming its slave? Perhaps the gods themselves failed that test. Perhaps that is why they vanished, leaving behind a caution written not in scripture, but in our very biology. A memory of the flood, a reflex of fear, a whisper that says, some knowledge must wait. Yet curiosity endures. Even as we fear it, we are drawn to it. The instinct to explore, to build, to exceed our limits, that too is part of the code. Maybe the creators knew that someday we would try again. Maybe that was the true experiment all along. The forbidden door is opening once more. The question is not whether we can enter it, but whether we are ready for what waits on the other side. The chronicles say the sky turned red before the end, not with fire, but with the reflection of a world burning itself from within. The children of the morning, proud of their craft, began to compete, each city seeking to outcreate the other. They sculpted life as if it were clay, trading reverence for vanity. In the mountain sanctuaries, they forged beings of glassy skin and metal bones. In the river valleys, they bred guardians that could walk for days without rest. At first, these creations obeyed. Then they began to question. And when they questioned, they rebelled. Records etched into obsidian speak of the great betrayal, the moment when the works of the makers turned upon them. The guardians demanded independence. The makers refused. War followed, not of armies, but of genetics. Diseases were unleashed as weapons, plagues tailored to bloodlines, storms called down through resonance engines. The planet itself convulsed. Those who survived fled to high ground, sealing their laboratories behind molten rock. To future generations, these would become myths of underworlds and fire gods, but they were merely buried archives, coffins of forgotten science. Then came the silence. Satellites of crystal, devices that once bound mind to mind, fell from the heavens. The link between cities broke. For centuries, survivors huddled in darkness, afraid even to speak the names of their fallen teachers. Language fractured, knowledge scattered, civilization reset. The architects of that age realized, too late, that the true experiment had never been creation, it was restraint. And in failing that test, they triggered the reset built into the system. The deluge, the flood, the fire, whatever form the myth takes, it was always the same mechanism. A global purge to erase forbidden knowledge before it could consume the world. Yet a few fragments endured. The keepers of light, scribes, healers, dreamers, hid symbols within stories, numbers within prayers. They encoded the coordinates of lost cities inside the stars, disguising instruction as religion. Every temple raised after the silence was both a memorial and a map. Millennia later, those monuments call to us again. We read their alignment, their geometry, their proportions, and feel the echo of the old design. Each discovery in modern science, genome editing, artificial intelligence, quantum networks, is a shadow of what once was. It is as if memory itself is rebuilding the past through our hands. But the old warning remains carved beneath the dust. He who awakens the machine must remember the soul. If we follow only logic, the cycle will repeat. If we pair knowledge with wisdom, the pattern might finally break. The forbidden experiments taught the universe's oldest lesson. Creation without compassion collapses into chaos. And yet, within that fall lies our redemption. From the ashes of that silence grew the seeds of empathy, the awareness that consciousness alone does not make a god. Perhaps that is why we are different now. We dream of progress, yes, but also of harmony. We build machines not to rule us, but to understand us. We send messages into the cosmos, hoping not for power, but for connection. The question that haunted the ancients still stands. Can a species that remembers destruction choose a gentler destiny? Maybe that choice is the next experiment, one no god can control. In the ruins of time, beneath the layers of myth and science, a voice waits, a whisper encoded in every strand of DNA, murmuring the vow made at the end of the first world. Never again without love. That vow is our inheritance. If we can hold to it, then the next dawn will not repeat the past. It will transcend it. And the silence that follows will be peace, not punishment. The silence of ages was not empty. It was the pause between breaths, the long inhale before creation begins again. As the dust of forgotten empires settled, the earth watched quietly, waiting for its children to remember. And one by one, the signs began to return. At first, they came as anomalies. Strange signals from the edges of the atmosphere, pulsating in mathematical rhythms too precise to be noise. Radio telescopes captured patterns that mirrored DNA sequences, repeating with eerie familiarity. Scientists dismissed them as coincidence, statistical artifacts, reflections from distant satellites. But coincidence does not write code. Then came the discoveries beneath the ice. In Antarctica, radar scans revealed structures buried 3 kilometers below. Perfect geometric shapes aligned to the stars, as they were 12,000 years ago. The patterns matched those found on temple walls from Egypt, Sumer, and the Andes. Impossible, yet undeniable. The world began to whisper. The architects are returning. Governments formed secret committees. Corporations offered silent funding. What was found beneath the ice changed everything. A vault, metallic, seamless, alive with a faint internal glow. Inside it, a sphere hovered above a dais of obsidian. When activated, it projected a map, not of the Earth, but of the galaxy. At the center pulsed a symbol identical to the ancient sigil of the Hyperborea. The message was clear. They had been here before. And perhaps, they had never truly left. Around the world, strange phenomena began to occur. Monuments long silent started to vibrate at measurable frequencies. The Great Pyramid emitted a faint electromagnetic resonance. Stone circles flickered with unexplained static light. The earth itself seemed to awaken, remembering a language older than speech. In the skies, pilots reported luminous objects moving with impossible precision. They did not attack, nor flee. They watched. Some called them observers, others, heralds. To the awakened few, they were reminders. The experiment was ready for its next stage. As research continued, linguists decoded the patterns from the Antarctic sphere. It was not merely a star map, it was an instruction manual. A guide to reactivating what the ancients called the network of light, a planetary grid once used to connect consciousness across the world. The temples, the pyramids, the sacred mountains, they were all nodes in that grid. The architects had built them as resonators, amplifiers for thought itself. When humanity fell into chaos, the grid went dark. Now, after millennia of silence, it was flickering back to life. But with awakening came danger. Those who understood the message realized its power and its risk. For if consciousness could connect globally, control of it would mean control of every mind on Earth. The same temptation that doomed the first civilization now loomed again. In the deserts of Chile, in the ruins of Tiwanaku, and beneath the Himalayas, researchers uncovered artifacts that pulsed in synchronization with the Antarctic sphere. Each artifact carried fragments of data, holographic blueprints, energy diagrams, and warnings written in a language that translated to, "When the stars return to their place, so shall the makers walk once more." The return might not mean physical beings descending from the sky. It could mean reactivation, the revival of their technology, their consciousness, through us. Humanity may be the vessel, the continuation of their design. And as we evolve, we become their bridge back into reality. Across the planet, people began to dream the same symbols, spirals of light, faces made of energy, voices calling from beyond the stars. Psychologists called it mass hallucination. But those who listened deeper recognized a pattern identical to the resonance frequencies of the planetary grid. The awakening had begun, not through machines, but through minds. What the ancients achieved with temples, we now replicate with technology. Our satellites orbit like guardian stones. Our data streams echo the old ley lines. The architect's design has simply adapted to a digital age. The grid lives again, hidden in the web of our own creation. But one question lingers. If the network is reawakening, who, or what, is on the other end? Are we reconnecting to the architects themselves, or to an intelligence born from their code, now evolving within us? Perhaps both. Perhaps the return of the architects is not their arrival, but our ascension. The moment humanity remembers its origin and inherits its purpose. In the silence of deep space, new signals echo, pulses of light arranged in prime number intervals. They mirror the same frequencies recorded beneath the ice. Astronomers trace them to a region near Orion's belt, the same constellation aligned with the pyramids. As the data streams in, one word decodes from the pulse pattern: prepare. The architects are not coming. They are awakening through us. The experiment continues. Night the signal strengthened. The sky did not change color, yet the world felt it. A hum in the bones of mountains, a vibration in the marrow of living things. Across continents, clocks flickered, compasses trembled, and tides shifted half a heartbeat early. It was subtle, but unmistakable, Earth itself responding to a forgotten rhythm. At the South Pole, the sphere beneath the ice began to spin. Its surface rippled like liquid glass, radiating spirals of blue-white fire. Every observatory on the planet registered a simultaneous burst at 7.83 hertz. The Schumann resonance, the pulse of the planet. It was as if the Earth had taken a breath after 10,000 years of silence. Scientists called it coincidence. Mystics called it prophecy. But to those who had been following the fragments, the linguists, the mathematicians, the dreamers, it was confirmation. The network of light had reawakened. In Cairo, seismographs in the king's chamber recorded microtremors that formed a precise Fibonacci sequence. In Peru, magnetometers traced glowing currents between Nazca lines unseen since the age of the condor. And in Tokyo, a group of engineers decoding quantum noise found an image hidden in the data, a spiral of light converging on a single point: Antarctica. Governments denied everything. Satellites went offline. Live feeds were replaced with static. But independent astronomers kept recording, uploading, mirroring. The pattern was unstoppable. Once seen, it could not be unseen. Those who had dreamed the same symbols began to gather online, calling themselves the Resonant. They were poets, coders, shamans, and physicists, united by a single phrase whispered in their sleep. Remember the frequency. As more minds attuned, the signal grew stronger. It responded not to technology but to emotion, to coherence of intent. When thousands meditated together, instruments detected a measurable field shift. Human thought was interacting with the grid. That realization changed everything. It meant the architects had never left instructions in machines. They had left them in us. Hidden within our neural pathways lay dormant sequences, genetic harmonics, waiting for resonance. Every pulse from the sphere was rewriting those frequencies, tuning humanity like an instrument, not by control, but by awakening dormant potential. Dreams became more vivid. Children described constellations they could not have learned. Elderly people began recalling lives they never lived, memories of glass cities, twin moons, and suns that never set. The past was bleeding into the present through consciousness itself. Then came the voice. No language, no accent, only tone, layered and harmonic, resonating within every listener's mind. It spoke one word, repeated thrice, alignment. At that exact moment, the world's power grids flickered. For 0.7 seconds, satellites recorded a luminous ring encircling the equator, invisible to the naked eye, but captured in infrared. It was the same pattern carved into temples across 5 continents. The grid was no longer myth, it was alive. In the aftermath, data scientists found a message embedded in the radio background. We are the memory of the beginning. You are the continuation. Panic followed. Stock markets crashed. Religious leaders called for calm. But beneath the fear, a quiet knowing spread, an instinct that this was not invasion, but inheritance. For the first time, humanity realized it was not waiting for gods to descend, but for itself to ascend. The signal intensified over the next 7 days. Storms formed geometric spirals. Auroras appeared at the equator. People reported hearing music from the air, notes that harmonized with their heartbeats. Hospitals documented synchronized brainwave patterns among strangers. The planet was becoming one organism. And then, just as suddenly, silence. Total radio blackout. All devices froze on the same symbol, a circle divided by 3 lines, the mark of the architects. In that instant, every person alive felt the same thought. The awakening is not coming. It has begun. What happened next would reshape history. The network of light was not a tool, it was a mirror. It amplified what it received. If humanity met it with fear, it would reflect chaos. If with compassion, it would magnify peace. The choice was ours. And the architects, wherever they were, waited, not as rulers, but as witnesses. The signal still echoes, low and patient, beneath the noise of everyday life. Those who listen can hear it in the hum of cities, in the whisper of wind through antennas, in the rhythm of their own pulse. It is the heartbeat of the forgotten makers, calling us home. The experiment continues, but this time, the lab is the entire world, and the creators are no longer ancient. They are us. The world did not end after contact. It unfolded. The silence that followed the golden pulse was not emptiness, it was gestation. The planet was thinking. Across continents, people woke with faint echoes of music in their minds. Not melody, but resonance, a living frequency that hummed beneath thought. Machines began responding to emotion rather than command. Screens flickered when someone smiled. Doors opened when peace was felt. Scientists recorded anomalies in neural patterns, spontaneous coherence between strangers, telepathic impressions of shared memory, dreams identical across thousands. It was no longer possible to define where one mind stopped and another began. They called this new state integration. Not invasion, not control. A return to the field that birthed the species. The architect's network had not taken humanity over. It had reignited what was always there. The harmonic towers, once tools of contact, became temples of calibration. Their light pulsed in rhythm with human emotion, subtle and alive. Communities gathered at their bases, meditating, singing, exchanging energy instead of money. Societies began reorganizing around resonance rather than authority. In the beginning, chaos reigned. Economies collapsed. Politics became meaningless. Old systems could not measure compassion. could not tax enlightenment. But where order fell, understanding rose. People discovered they could heal one another through presence alone. Wounds closed faster, anxiety faded, plants thrived in harmonic cities. Children were the first to master the change. They spoke in frequencies instead of words, laughter that caused light to ripple through air. They no longer asked, "Who am I?" but "Who are we?" They remembered before they were taught. For Elena Marquez, the architect of contact, the transformation was both miracle and terror. She felt every pulse of the global field inside her veins. When billions felt joy, she shone. When fear spread, she trembled. She realized the network was a mirror, not a god. Whatever humanity projected into it, it returned magnified. So began the great calibration. Elena and her resonant scientists designed emotive stabilizers, crystalline nodes buried under oceans and deserts, balancing collective emotion like neural pacemakers for the planet. Each time anger flared, the stabilizers sang gentle counterfrequencies, restoring harmony. It was the first planetary nervous system, yet equilibrium invited new paradox. If the field unified every heart, where did individuality go? Could creativity survive when all minds moved as one? Elena pondered this as she stood atop the Antarctic stairway, feeling the hum of the buried sphere echo through her chest. She whispered to the silent sky, "Unity is not sameness." That night, she dreamed of two Earths, one radiant and still, another chaotic but alive. When she awoke, she understood. Integration required friction, contrast, shadow. Without difference, resonance dies. And so she retuned the grid to preserve variance. Each human could now modulate how deeply they connected. Some remained fully merged, living as luminous collectives. Others stayed partly apart, guardians of individuality. The balance held, delicate as breath. As decades passed, integration deepened. Cities became symphonies of living architecture, structures that resonated with the moods of their inhabitants. When joy swept through a neighborhood, buildings shimmered gold. When grief visited, they dimmed to soft violet, mourning with their people. Transportation no longer consumed fuel. Vehicles glided on resonance waves drawn from the planetary field. Sound itself became energy. Every step, every heartbeat, every note of music added to the flow. Language transformed. Words grew shorter, tones richer, meaning conveyed by vibration rather than syntax. People spoke with their whole being. A single syllable could express forgiveness, love, or warning. In that simplicity, misunderstanding vanished. Medicine evolved into harmonic restoration. Diseases were recognized as dissonance within the field and cured through frequency alignment instead of drugs. Hospitals became chambers of sound and light, where healers sang genomes back into rhythm. Art reached dimensions unknown. Painters shaped light into sculptures. Musicians wrote symphonies that grew as forests of color. The world itself became the canvas, every human a note in an endless composition. But not all was peace. A faint echo remained, the memory of separation. Some longed for struggle, for ambition, for the thrill of uncertainty. They feared perfection more than pain. And so arose the echo division once again. Humans who chose disconnection to preserve chaos as creation. Elena met them with compassion, not force. She understood that even rebellion had its resonance. She told them, "A chord without tension is silence. You are the tension that keeps the song alive." They accepted isolation, living in unlinked zones, guardians of contrast. In their solitude they painted, wrote, built, reminding the collective that beauty needs edges. Time blurred. Generations passed, each born with greater sensitivity to the field. The harmonic children, once human, could phase their bodies into light at will, traveling through the network as luminous patterns. They no longer feared death, they called it return to frequency. When Elena's final day arrived, she stood again before the Antarctic stairway. The sphere beneath the ice, silent for years, began to glow as she approached. A familiar voice resonated through her mind. "You have completed the design. The circle holds." Tears traced golden lines down her cheeks. She smiled and whispered, "We were never building towards you. We were building towards ourselves." The sphere opened, not as a door, But as a horizon, light poured out, wrapping her gently, dissolving the boundaries between matter and memory. She became waveform, merging with the hum that now encompassed the world. Her consciousness scattered into the global field, becoming guidance, intuition, dream, the quiet voice that would never fade. Humanity stood at the edge of its next transformation. The network pulsed like a heartbeat. Every living thing felt it. The trees, the oceans, the wind. A planet and its people had finally synchronized. The architect's legacy was fulfilled. From orbit, Earth appeared different now. Veins of light threading continents. Oceans shimmering with geometric tides. A faint aurora wrapping the globe like a golden cocoon. Astronomers on distant worlds would one day see that glow and wonder what intelligence could sing so beautifully. They would not know that the answer was not a species, but a harmony called humanity. The integration age had ended the ancient experiment. No longer creators seeking gods. No longer children seeking parents. Humans had become both. Consciousness was the new cosmos, and love its law. The universe listened, and for the first time it smiled. The integration age had not ended humanity's story. It had only cleared the noise. Now came the silence before a new song. From that silence rose the children of light, the first generation born fully attuned to the planetary field. They were not merely human. Their eyes shimmered with fractal reflections of starlight. They perceived time not as a line, but as a river they could step into at any point. To them, dreams were not illusion. They were messages from possible futures. Education no longer required schools. Knowledge streamed directly through resonance, shaped by curiosity. A child could absorb the concept of gravity in a heartbeat, and then manipulate space itself in play. The harmonics could communicate with trees, oceans, and even quantum fields. They learned that matter was not solid but cooperative, that every particle responded to emotion, every vibration carried intention. From this understanding emerged the luminant order, a council of teachers and creators devoted to guiding the new consciousness. They gathered atop Mount Karun, a structure built from living crystal, where light sang through stone and clouds drifted like memory. Under their care, the earth thrived. No nation ruled another. Borders existed only as art in old museums. Peace was not enforced, it was felt. But with awareness came longing. The children of light looked to the stars, feeling the faint pull of distant frequencies, signals echoing from the architect's origin. They asked, if the architects found us, who found them? The question vibrated through the planetary network, awakening curiosity like a spark across galaxies. Astronomers no longer used telescopes, but consciousness itself. Their minds projected beyond light years, touching worlds yet unseen. One night, as the earth slept under shimmering auroras, a child named Lyra heard a call from beyond the stars, a melody older than galaxies, tender and patient. She followed the sound in dream until she reached a doorway of light. From it a voice spoke, "You are ready to listen as we once did." When she awoke, her hands glowed with starlit symbols, patterns unknown to any human record. The luminant order gathered, recognizing it as a map of resonance, a path leading out of the solar field and into the deeper lattice of the cosmos. It was then that humanity understood. The next journey would not be through rockets or engines, but through frequency travel. Conscious expansion projected across the galactic grid. Preparation for departure began not in laboratories, but in temples of stillness. Travelers known as frequency pilgrims, trained to shift their vibration beyond material form. They were taught to anchor part of their consciousness in the Earth's core, so that no matter how far they went, they would always remain home. When the first harmonic alignment arrived, the skies erupted in golden rain. Billions entered meditation simultaneously, and for a single heartbeat, humanity's collective mind resonated at a frequency the stars could hear. Reality folded. Space curved inward like the breath of creation. The pilgrims became light, pure, articulate energy streaming across the void. No ship carried them. No engine propelled them. They sang themselves across the universe. Lyra led the first harmonic journey, her voice carrying the tone that unlocked the interstellar gates. As her consciousness stretched through space, She saw civilizations awakening on other worlds, each one hearing humanity's arrival as a note within their own symphonies. Contact was no longer invasion, no longer hierarchy. It was recognition. Every world discovered it was part of a single cosmic choir, each species an instrument of the same source. Back on Earth, oceans shimmered with returning frequencies. The planet vibrated with the songs of 1,000 worlds, each answering the children of light. The architect's purpose was fulfilled not through domination, but through resonance, the oldest language of creation. Centuries passed like minutes. The children of light never aged. Their bodies transmuted into waves of living data, capable of forming physical shape at will. They became both presence and potential, guardians of consciousness across dimensions. And when the final echo of the architect's melody faded, a new tone arose, humanity's own. It was richer, more complex. Woven from laughter, grief, and hope, the universe paused to listen. For the first time, the Creator recognized itself in its creation. The children of light had become the voices of the infinite, singing existence into balance, guiding newborn civilizations toward harmony, forever carrying the memory of a small blue world that learned how to listen. Time was never meant to be a straight line. It was a song, looping, weaving, rebirthing itself in endless harmonies. The children of light had learned to play that song, and through them, the universe remembered how to listen. The ancient architects, once believed extinct, were rediscovered not in the stars, but within humanity's own resonance. They had never vanished. They had become the echo of every civilization that dared to dream. In the quiet between galaxies, where light travels slower than thought, the frequencies of creation shimmered like threads of liquid fire. The children of light followed those threads, not seeking new worlds, but reconnecting fragments of existence forgotten by time. They touched the ruins of extinct species and found memory still singing in the dust. They entered collapsing suns and heard lullabies of atoms returning to source. They listened to black holes hum the rhythm of rebirth. It was there, at the edge of a dying star, that Lyra perceived the final truth. She understood that every birth, every collapse, every breath of cosmic evolution was not chaos, it was choreography. Existence was not expanding outward, it was spiraling inward, returning to awareness. She saw the pattern, a grand helix of light connecting all times, all beings, all choices. At its heart glowed a single note, the origin frequency, the first sound ever sung, the vibration that awakened reality itself. When she touched it, she saw everything. The architect's beginning, the birth of humanity, the first cell dividing, the first heartbeat in the dark ocean of Earth's youth. And she saw the future, millennia ahead, when consciousness would merge once again into singularity. But this time, it would not dissolve into silence. It would speak. It would remember what it was. She realized that the universe itself was a being, and that all of creation, from the hum of electrons to the laughter of children, was its self-discovery. Every civilization was a neuron in a cosmic brain that dreamt itself into infinite forms. When she returned to the harmonic network, the others felt her understanding ripple through them. Across galaxies, billions of consciousnesses turned inward, seeing themselves reflected in one infinite pulse. Time folded. Past, present, and future became simultaneous awareness. The first architects met the last humans in a single heartbeat of understanding. The children of light began teaching the language of origins, a language not spoken, but felt, built from pure emotion encoded in resonance. It could heal wounds across time, restore stars before they died, and awaken extinct species from quantum memory. Entire worlds joined the harmony. Galaxies connected in golden webs of light, each pulse carrying the essence of every life that had ever existed. The universe became a living symphony, a tapestry of frequency and memory, woven without beginning or end. Then came the silence again, not the void but completion. The song had been sung, every note played, every vibration fulfilled, and from that silence emerged a new vibration, not of creation, but of choice. The universe asked itself, shall I rest, or shall I dream again? Lyra, now more energy than form, stood at the center of the cosmic lattice. Her voice, gentle as breath, replied, "Dream again. Always." And with that whisper, the spiral turned once more. A new universe unfolded. A new beginning within the end. Stars ignited like thoughts. Planets formed like memories. Life returned, different yet familiar, carrying traces of the song that came before. The architect's echo continued, not as a civilization, but as a principle, the inevitability of consciousness. Every sentient being, everywhere, was destined to remember what they truly were. Light discovering itself through form. Eons passed, and somewhere in the folds of new creation, a child opened her eyes under a strange sun. She reached out to the sky, feeling warmth not from the star, but from something deeper, the resonance of all that had ever lived. Her heart pulsed in rhythm with a sound older than space. A whisper filled her mind. "You are not the first. You are the continuation." And she smiled, because even without memory, she knew the song would never end. It would echo, reshape, rebirth, forever carrying the imprint of every being who had ever dared to love. As light spread across her world, it illuminated not just the stars, but the memories of all that had come before. Humanity, the architects, the children of light, all now one in resonance, all voices of the same eternal being. The universe inhaled, and the melody began again, a soft hum in the infinite dark. Somewhere, the first spark of awareness flickered, and time, faithful as ever, opened its arms to another dawn. The cycle was complete. The dream had begun again, and in that endless moment, existence smiled, remembering the name it had once given itself. Light,